Hello everyone and welcome to my brand spanking new channel, Upside Lens. So first thing first, I'm Seb and I live in Norwich, good old Norwich in the UK. And this is my brand new channel all about mobile phone photography. So now you're probably thinking, hang on a minute, mobile phone photography. I'm sure I've read somewhere on Reddit, someone going, you can't take a good photo on a mobile phone, you have to get a digital SLR, aka a mirrorless camera. Well, let's rewind a little bit first, okay? So to clear things up, first, I'm not a pro photographer, and when I mean that, when I mean is I don't get paid to take photographs, okay? I have got a full-time job, but I've got a lot of experience in taking photos, and I've been doing so for the last decade, well, more than a decade. And I've been using all sorts. I've been using digital SLRs like GH4, GH5, Panasonic S5, Sony A7 II, you know, as well as mobile phones. And I think the first mobile phone that I've used and thought, do you know what, the pictures are actually stunning, for the time anyway, was the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. And yeah, at the time I was blown away by the quality that you could get out of a tiny, tiny little sensor. Obviously, years have passed and each year the hardware improves. So in terms of lenses, in terms of sensors, glass, software, stabilization, you name it, mobile phones are getting better and better every year. Now, I'll put a disclaimer out there, okay? I've never said that a mobile phone is better or anywhere near as good as a digital SLR mirrorless camera, because it isn't. It's physics at the end of the day. But it's come to a point now, to a stage where mobile phones are really good for most people. And like they say, it's not about how big your camera is, but how you use it. So this leads us to which camera phone should you get in 2023? Well, it's not the video for this, it's not the channel for that. I'm not here to say you should get this one over this one. All I'm going to say is I got the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 5 just purely because of a lot of reasons that made it, to me, the best all-rounder in 2023. The first one being, it's a very robust software that you get packaged on the phone, the Photo Pro app. And what I mean by that is everything that you'd find in a Sony DSLR mirrorless camera is on there. All the different functions, all the different settings, well, mostly all of them anyway. And that really makes it a great all-rounder just for that specific reason, but not just because of that. In terms of colours as well, I find them really natural and very pleasing in terms of skin tones, and it's not just overdone, oversaturated like other brands tend to do. Third one would be the processing. So that's a big one. A lot of phones out there, and believe me, I've been around. When taking a raw file, they will impose you with that extra processing in the background before they spit out the raw file. That extra sharpening, extra stuff that shouldn't be in there really. And to me, as the more simple, the more bare the raw file is, the better. So I can use it in post when I edit it, and the picture won't fall apart altogether. So that's one of the main reasons as well why I think the Xperia 1 Mark 5 excels for that reason. Now, one of the main features I think that kind of supersedes all of the above is the shutter button. So that, my friend, is the single best feature you can get on any smartphone. A proper shutter button that's got a half press shutter. So when you take a picture, you can actually half press, lock the exposure or lock the focus on the subject or anything that you're trying to take a picture of, and then recenter it, recompose your picture, and fully press the button. And you can give me any phone with the white little circle, the white little shutter button. I'll take a nice picture. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'll take a good picture. But as soon as you give me that shutter button, my brain switches straight to creative mode, and I forget that I'm shooting with a phone. I think I'm like DSLR, and your brain switches and try to compose the picture and frame the pictures. Like, I don't know, it's weird to explain, but it's just that shut button does it for me. On top of that, another feature that's really great on the Xperia 1 Mark 5 is the continuous autofocus, shooting at up to 30 frames per second, And even though it only shoots in JPEGs as opposed to RAW files like you would on a digital SLR mirrorless camera, um, it will still allow you to take some crisp photos. I'll put a couple of examples here of moving subjects. So it's great for taking photos of panning shots. Oops, sorry phone. So it's great. It's great for those panning shots. It's great for moving subjects like, you know, dogs, cats, babies, where you can take so many pictures in a row and you could just pick the best one out of the whole lot. Again, it's only JPEGs, not RAW, which is a shame, but I'll take that over a blurry photo at the end of the day. And overall, if you add up all these features together, that to me makes the best camera phone of 2023. And again, it's only my opinion, okay? I'm not saying get this phone as opposed to something else, but yeah, it's just a better phone. So now that you got your phone at the ready, your Xperia 1 Mark 5, your Xperia 5 Mark 5, your Mark 4, your Mark 3, you launch that Photo Pro app and you're like, wow, where do I start? I'd rather stay in basic because I don't know anything about the manual mode. It's all confusing. That's basically what I keep seeing on Reddit. People just like, yeah, I love the camera. It's just, you know, it's too complex. I don't understand all of it. And that's why this video is here to help you out, guys. But before we start talking about that, there's a few things that we need to talk about when it comes to mobile phone photography. So before you can go out there and take some banging shots, there's a few things that you do need to remember, okay? And that's what we talked previously about the mirrorless cameras. There are limits to mobile phone photography. The first one being the depth of field. You know, a mirrorless camera will have a very shallow, well, depending on the glass that you put in front of it, will have a very shallow depth of field, which allows basically to isolate your subject from the foreground and the background. So you have to think that you've got to use tricks when you take photos to kind of emulate them. So, you know, going very close, let's say, to a lamppost and taking your subject in the background so you can't get that separation between the two. But again, it's one of the limitations, as well as the dynamic range. So you've got to make sure you don't overexpose or underexpose your subject, as well as preserve the highlights and the shadows. But again, don't worry, it's something that we're going to talk about in detail later. But it's just great to have those in mind before you start shooting. And that's why prior to making this video, creating the channel, I've taken the phone and extensively tried it to basically find out the limits, what can work, what can't, and I'll basically save you the hassle of doing it. But you also have to bear in mind, okay, that it's 2023 and it's now the age of AI. So now a lot of people are going to cry, oh, AI, it's no good. It's not the original view of the photos when you first take it. It's all there to help you at the end of the day, okay? When you take a RAW file, it's really great to use those new tools which come with Lightroom, Topaz AI, Luminar. It's quite so many tools out there that you can use, and they're great. Embrace them, especially mobile phone photography. You know, when you're limited in terms of noise, in terms of lighting, it's great to use those tools to counteract the limitations. And again, it'll probably be the subject of another video, but there's a lot you can do to remove the noise via AI, to increase the sharpness, and all these things. Now, since we're going to go pretty much in depth into the Photo Pro app and the manual modes, there's three things that you really need to understand about photography. And since the dawn of time, since photography started, there's been three pillars of photography. ISO, which is basically the sensitivity, the light sensitivity on the sensor. To make it really easy, is the lower the number of your ISO, the less noise, the less, you know, dots, that little nasty artifacts you get on your photos. The higher it goes, obviously you can get better low light shots with a higher ISO, but a lot more of that noise will creep in. And because our sensors on mobile phones are smaller, then that means there's not enough light. And obviously, as you increase the sensitivity, that's when the noise appears. So there's a lot of resources out there, great resources on YouTube on how photography works. I'm just trying to summarize it all and make it as digestible as possible without boring you with all the details. But so that's the first one, the ISO. So if you take a triangle, that's the top. You got the ISO. Then you got your aperture. That's basically the iris, how open or how close it is. I'll make it really easy for you. It's locked on most phones nowadays anyway. We're stuck on 1.9, I believe, 1.8, 1.9 on the Xperia 1 Mark 5, and it's not something that you've got to worry about. So let's completely disregard that one. And the third side of that triangle is the shutter speed. So now, again, I don't want to bore you to death with the principles of photography, but it's basically how quick or how slow the shutter opens. Okay, so if you want, I don't know, let's say you're taking a picture of a moving car, you want a shutter to close extremely quick because you want the car to be as crisp as possible and not blurry as it goes past. On the other hand, if you want something, I don't know, you're shooting a waterfall and you want to kind of like get that milky kind of look, then you leave that shutter open for longer, and then it will blur out the movement itself, if that makes sense. Everything else will be crisp, nice and sharp, but the movement itself will be blurred out, making those nice kind of milky shots of waterfalls or water running. So now I think the best way to kind of teach you and show you what the app does is to jump right into it.
Right, so let's jump right into the meat of this video. I'll try to make it as quick, as nice and easy as possible for you guys. But if I'm rambling a bit, just bear with. So the first mode that you're in when you first open the camera is basic mode. So apart from taking your daily photos without, like, I don't know, a receipt photo, or your mom texts you, say, oh, what are you having for dinner tonight, and you just send her a picture of your ready meal that you just got out of the microwave. That's what it's good for, really. Day-to-day photos that you don't particularly care about, the nice, quick and easy point and shoot picture that you can just send and forward to someone, or as a reminder that stays in your gallery, if you're like me. So that I won't expand too much on the basic mode, because it is what it is. It's just basic. Okay, now if we tap on the icon there, you'll be greeted with different menus here. Okay, so you got automatic, which is basically a step above the basic mode. So all the functions are handled by the camera itself, by the phone itself, and all you've got to do is press the shutter button and it'll take the picture for you. Now, having said that, you'll still get a better quality than you would with the basic mode, because you get a lot less processing than you would with basic mode, because you can save your file as a raw file and you be able to edit it afterwards. But just bear in mind that you'll be restricted in terms of the settings, like your shutter speed and your ISO and all that. So then after that, you've got the P mode, or the program mode, or program auto settings mode. And this one, again, is a step above the auto mode. It gives you a little bit more kind of leeway in what you can do. Here, the main feature is that what you can do on the right hand side here, you've got a slider with your exposure level. So you can basically increase it and get the picture brighter, or lower it and get your picture darker. And then the rest will be handled by the camera itself, i.e. basically ISO and the shutter speed. So you can see that on the bottom of the screen, just down here and down there. Hang on, let me increase the exposure so you can actually see. So you got your ISO that's moving dynamically, and your shutter speed as well here. Okay, you will notice that the focal length, the aperture, stays at 1.9, because again, that's fixed and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so again, from left to right, you'll see that the shutter speed is changing as we slide across. And the reason why the ISO is not is because I've got it currently set to 200, but if we put it on automatic, there you go, it will vary according to how bright you want your picture. So this is a good place to start if you're not too sure, or if it is a case of death or life, you're going to miss the shot or not, or take the shot, then yeah, definitely use the P mode, but it's definitely not the first mode I'd shoot in if I was to be on location, okay? Then the next one, next mode you got is the shutter priority mode, or S mode, and this one gives you the ability to go left and right on the shutter. So the higher the number, the darker it gets, and that means the less light gets onto the sensor, sorry Wally, and the slower the shutter speed, the more light gets in, but basically your shutter is closing and opening a lot slower than you would with a higher number. Okay, the higher number, it will close quick, that's why you get less light in, and the lower shutter speed, it will close slower, but you'll get more light in, meaning that because it's slowly closing and opening, that if you move your camera in that setting, anything underneath, I don't know, under 1/30th of a second, your picture might be blurry if you haven't got steady hands. Okay, so anything under 1/30th of a second all the way to 30 seconds, you'd want to use a tripod for that, because handheld is not an option. Okay, and the reason why you would want 30-second exposure, we're leaving the sensor exposed to light for 30 seconds, is, let's say if you're doing a I don't know, you want to film some car trail lights, or if you want to film a waterfall, or you know, but you'd need an ND filter on top to be able to control the light. Okay, so that's your shutter speed. Okay, and that's your shutter priority mode, and then you got your manual mode, but we'll get back to the manual mode and the last mode a bit later. What I want to show you first is the menu, how I set up my camera, so you guys can see that. So first, you're greeted with this menu, which you've got 4 categories here. The first, the shooting, is a file format. Now, because you'll be using mostly the manual settings, you want to be able to edit your picture afterwards. And to do so, you'll have to have it either in RAW mode or in RAW and JPEG. The difference between RAW and JPEG and just RAW is well, self-explanatory. It'll save RAW file as well as a JPEG file. Okay, but the reason why I've got it in JPEG now is to show you a feature later. Okay, but what you should know really is that you should set your phone to RAW file. Okay, because that's what will give you the ability to post-process your picture with software like Lightroom or Luminar or anything like that. Okay. But for now, I'll leave it for JPEG to show you something later. Then aspect ratio is how you want the aspect ratio of your picture to be taken. Generally speaking, you want to leave it on 4:3 unless you're doing, I don't know, eBay product shots, and you might want the 1:1, the square aspect. But generally speaking, you want it on 4:3. Drive mode is an option that we'll see on the main menu here later. Okay, so we'll get back to that later. Most of these options here, to be honest, you've got them on the front facing on the main app anyway, down in the settings, so you can also change those there, but you get more options here. Then camera settings memory, we'll get back to this one later. Again, this is all to do with the custom presets. Okay, continuous shooting feedback, that's to say whether you want the camera to kind of vibrate and to make noises every time you do a burst shot, and that is very handy, so I definitely would leave it on. And digital zoom settings, I'll leave it as it is, because you don't want any more processing to your photos. Then exposure and color, again, those we'll touch them when we get to the settings on the main screen. Focus mode, let's have a look. Yeah, there's an option here which is called peaking, and I highly encourage you to turn it on, because that will be the difference between having a blurry shot or a sharp shot if you shoot in manual focus. Okay, and the peaking color will be, I'll set mine to white, but you can set it to whatever color. I think it's white or red or yellow or blue, but you can set it to what you want really. Then the last one, setup. So that's how I set up my phone for photography. So touch to adjust is basically when you touch the screen, it will focus on that particular subject. So I'll put object tracking. Grid lines, highly recommend you turn that on because it will help with your composition every time you take a photo. So that's the lines that you currently see on the screen here on your viewport. Then AEL button customization. I highly suggest also that you set it up as speaking, but it's down to your personal preference. It's basically a shortcut that will allow you to get to any of those settings here. But I'll set mine to peaking and I'll explain why later when we get to focusing. Function menu customization. This one, you can reorder all of these settings here on the right hand side in whatever order you want, or you can remove some of them if you don't actually use them. But I think the only one that I've used changed is the first one, the drive mode, because that's what I use the most. But again, as you get to use the camera more, you'll probably get your own shortcuts as well. And then we've got disk button customization. This one, again, you also want on header information, level, and histogram. And I'll show you right now on the main screen what it is. So on this side, on the bottom screen, on the bottom here, you get your histogram, and that's what is really handy. And I highly recommend you got it on. It will show you your highlights. So basically, if anything that you've got in your shot is overexposed or you blur your highlights, will be right on the right hand side there and peaking at the top. And any shadows in your shot that are crushed or underexposed will be on the left hand side here. So ideally you want all your big bars to be in the middle here and nothing on the left and nothing on the right. But realistically, in real condition, in real life conditions, it will happen. Okay, so we'll talk about how to sort out this a bit later. Okay, but I just wanted to show you how important it is to have it on the screen. What this option also does is add the levels there. So it will show you how leveled your shot is, and that's very important as well. If you're doing, like, let's say some low on the ground and you can't actually see the screen very well, but at least you can see that line and you know if your shot is going to be wonky or if it's actually going to be lined up and all straight. So again, very important to have it on. Then if we go back to our settings, where are we? Level calibration. This one is to calibrate that line that I've just showed you, but out of the box it should work as it should. Then you got use volume button as, I'll leave it as zoom, makes no odds to me. Audio signal, it's basically all the noises that your cameras will make every time you take a shot. So you're beeping and all that. I'll leave it on, so at least I know I got a shot, why not? But if you're taking, I don't know, wildlife photography, then you might want to turn that on, especially if you're doing like bird shooting or anything like that. Definitely turn it off because it will scare the birds away. Haptic feedback, I highly suggest you turn that off because what it will do, every time you take a shot, it will make your phone vibrate, and if you're shooting a low shutter speed, then it might introduce a bit of vibration and it might blur out your shot a little bit more than if it was off. So I recommend just having it off for safety. Data storage is just where you pop your you change where you want the photos saved, so either internal storage or SD card. Save location is your geolocation, whether you want the location to be embedded in your photo. I don't particularly care for that option, so I've got it off. Launch with shutter button, launch Photo Pro app, and that's basically when you're on the home screen and you want to launch the Photo Pro app straight away, you just long press on the shutter button, add that on. And this one is also very important, shooting mode at launch. I have it set as last use as opposed to, as opposed to always use basic mode, because if you're shooting a subject and you want to, I don't know, you're talking to your subject and then you close the app, I don't know, you just want to give your subject, your model, some information, then you launch the app again, it will restart the app in basic mode and you have to go back to the previous mode you were in. So to save the hassle, just literally have it set on last use mode, and then next time you launch the photo app, it will be exactly in the same position that you left it in, ready to shoot. The next one we got is mode dial guide. So this one will basically, I'll show you quickly. If you scroll this wheel here, it will give you tips on what each mode does. but as you get to use them, and obviously if you watch this video, you'll know what each mode does. So you don't need that extra kind of bulk on the screen to tell you what does what. Okay, so that's what I've got turned off. Oops, hang on, let's go back to those, let's say manual, and let's go back to settings. And what have we got now? Transfer and tagging mode, I've got it off. Bluetooth remote control, I've got it off. That is basically if you want to pair the Sony genuine remote with it. If you happen to want a remote, like a generic remote, you don't need to have it on. You just pair it with Bluetooth and it'll work. And then the rest is just tutorial and tips, so you don't really need that. Right, so that now takes us to the manual mode. Right, so manual mode. Why would you want to use it? In most cases, I'd say use the manual mode because that's what will give you basically the most control over what you're shooting, okay? So to understand exactly what the manual mode does, I'm going to go through every single one of these options here on the right hand side so you understand what does what and how to use it. So the first one, the little square here, is your drive mode. So drive mode is what happens when you press the shutter button. So single shooting, you press the shutter button, you will take a photo. That's it. Continuous, where are we? Let's go back. Continuous shooting, high plus, high, and low. They all do the same, but different ways. So what they do is the general behavior of it is you hold the shutter down and it will take a burst of photos. Low will take, I think, about 5 to 10 frames per second. High will take about 15 to 20, and high plus will take about 30 frames per second. So choosing one of those three is down to what you're shooting. As a general rule, I'd say low or high is enough for most scenarios, unless you're shooting something extremely fast, okay, that quite erratic, like I don't know really, like a bird maybe, you know. But if you're shooting cars or buses or bikes or I don't know, that kind of photography, low and high will be absolutely fine. High plus for very fast subjects, and if you definitely don't want to miss the action, okay? But to enable those modes, you have to be in JPEG mode. That's why I showed you here. File format has to be in JPEG to be able to shoot in those modes, okay? So I'll show you a trick at the end, how to do a custom preset to have those at a click of a finger without having to change RAW and JPEG and all those formats on the fly, okay? So for now, okay, I'll go back to the menu now. Hang on. So single shooting, menu, file format, RAW. Okay. So next ones, we got obviously the self timer and self timer 3 seconds. Those are if you want to take a picture of yourself, or if you don't want to introduce any movement whilst you're taking a picture when your phone is on the tripod. I'd set the timer to about 3 or 10 seconds. And the last one, HDR continuous shooting, is exactly the same as what we showed previously, but it will introduce some processing to the picture, so it will kind of stack pictures together to make your HDR look, which if you're shooting in manual would defeat the point. So I'd highly suggest not using HDR shooting, but I mean, it's down to you. Okay, so that's for the drive modes. Then we've got your focus modes. You've got 3 modes here. You've got single, continuous, and manual. Single is, well, it's quite self-explanatory. When you half press your shutter, okay, it'll do a single. It will lock that autofocus on the subject that you previously half pressed on, okay? So that's handy if you're just taking pictures of subjects that are not moving, like landscape or buildings. And next one you've got is the continuous. So that one will continuously adjust the focus on the go, on the fly, as the subject moves, or if you yourself move, okay? So that's handy, obviously, if someone walks past in the frame and you want to get a picture, a nice crisp photo of them, So that's a continuous one. So if you're taking pictures of pets as well, very important. And the first one, manual focus. So this one, manual focus, that's the reason why I've got peaking on the main screen here. It makes it much easier rather than having to go back in the menu, enable, peaking every time. And what it'll show you is what's in focus and what is not in focus at the moment. So if you're in manual focus, you'd want to be in manual focus if you've got time to carefully plan your shot and you just want to make sure that everything is in focus, or in instances where the camera is struggling to find focus on something. Like what I've noticed is if you try to take pictures of stuff in reflections, in puddles, it's quite hard to find the focus. The camera will struggle for that. So what you do, you set your focus yourself, and basically, as you can see on the view here now, everything that's got little dots and little lines on it means that it's in focus. So if I wanted, let's say, I don't know, the mouse right now to be in focus, okay, I'll just, where are we? There we go. So you can see the bit of the keyboard just here and the mouse in focus. And there we go. So it's not quite easy to see. So what you can do, okay, is when you go back to that menu here, manual focusing, at the bottom there, you can see it says focus magnifying. So what that shows you is what's in focus, and it's a bigger kind of frame, so you can see exactly what's in focus and what's not in focus. So let's say I want to take a picture of, I don't know, the speaker at the back. So I don't want Wally here in focus, but I want the speaker in focus. So what I'll do, I'll go back to that manual focus, and I will make sure that the speaker, see the knobs over there, where are they? They're highlighted with the little dots and little lines, so I know they're going to be in focus. So now I can exit that, and when I take my picture now, you can see that Wally is not in focus, but the speaker is, and whatever is in the foreground isn't either. Okay, so that's how you use the manual focus. But you can also, if you wanted to, if we go back to single shot, you can also click on the part of your picture on the screen there where you want your focus to be on. So if we do that, then it will track the focus on the subject that I've selected on the screen. Make sure you don't leave the frame, because if you do, then it's going to have trouble finding the subject again. So what you do, you click on that little cross here and redo it again. Okay, and that will track your subject. But generally speaking, I normally use the shutter button, half press the shutter button to be able to focus on what I want to take a picture of. Okay, so that's for the focus. So I'll leave it back on a single shot. Most of the time I'll be shooting in single shot autofocus. I'll only use continuous autofocus if I'm taking pictures of moving subjects, and manual focus on very tricky situations. Okay, that's the three scenarios that you change the focus for. Next one, we've got the focus area. So either go center or wide. Now, see, when I press the button, the half shutter button, it will show little green squares. So when you set it to wide, the phone will try to understand what you're trying to actually focus on, but it doesn't always get it right, and it wouldn't, because how would you know if you want to be selecting this area or this area or this area or that area? Do you see what I mean? So look, let's say I wanted to have Wally in focus. Well, it's not going to work because it keeps wanting to focus on Gru at the back. So if you go back to center, focus area in center, and then whatever is in the center now, your half press and center will be in focus. So by having it to single and not continuous, single and center, if I focus now, let's say I want Wally in the shot completely sharp but everything else blurry, I'll half press on Wally, recompose my picture, and now I can take my picture and it is just the way I want it to be, sharp on Wally and everything else blurry. And if I wanted to do the way around, so if I wanted, let's say, the speaker in focus but not Wally, so I'll do that, and there you go. And you just recompose whilst you've got your finger still halfway pressed on the shutter button, and then now you can take your shot. There we go. So that's really important to understand how those two settings work together. So the autofocus which mode you're going to use and which area of the focus will be in focus. Yeah. So that's why I recommend highly using center as opposed to wide in most cases. Okay, next one going along. Hang on, I'm just going to turn peaking off so the picture is clearer. There we go. So next one along, we've got the exposure bracket there, slider. So that is kind of the same as what we had in P mode here. Okay, but you'll only have access to that in manual mode if your ISO, which we'll get to in a second, is set to automatic. Okay. In most cases, when shooting in manual, you'll want ISO to be set to a set exposure, set number, okay? So by having that to a set ISO number, hang on, I'm just gonna brighten the screen a bit. There you go. That'll be grayed out. So I wouldn't worry about that. And to be honest, this one I wouldn't use because it gives you less control over the overall picture, okay? So next one along, so ISO. So ISO, like we said earlier, is the amount of light that reaches a sensor and how sensitive the sensor is to light, okay? So the lower, where are we? The lower the ISO, the darker the picture gets, which is because we're not making the sensor as sensitive to light. But the lower the number, the less grain, the less noise will be visible on your final image, okay? And it works the way around as well. The higher the number, the brighter your picture gets, but it'll be way more artifacts on your final picture and way more noise, and all the details will kind of disappear because you're on a high ISO number. In big cameras, in digital SLRs, it doesn't matter as much because the sensor is much bigger, and the noise therefore doesn't appear as much, and you can get away with it. But on mobile phones, you definitely want to keep the ISO as low as possible when shooting in any condition. So in normal daytime, I'd stick to 100, okay, and in nighttime, then I wouldn't go past, I don't know, 640. Maybe 800 at max, because again the noise will be quite consequent and it'll be hard to get rid of later in post, okay? So for now I'm just going to keep it that so you can actually see the viewport. So what I'll do is very bright daylight, like let's say on a beach, or you want to lower it as low as possible, so 25 to 100. Those are normally in the digital SLR world called extended ISO. They're not native. So correct me if I'm wrong. If you do know better than I do, in mobile phones, I don't know. But normally the native ISO should be 100. But in mobile phones, it might not be. But it does make a difference. What it'll do, it'll just darken your shot, okay? But as a general rule, you want to keep it to 100. So what I normally do, during daylight, I'll keep it to 100, and then after that, I'll play with my shutter speed to brighten the image or to darken the image, okay? Depending on the subject, whether the subject is moving, whether the subject is still. Hang on, I'm just going to make that brighter again so you can see. So really, it all comes down to ISO and shutter speed when you're taking photos. Those are the most important, apart obviously from the focus. The most important settings are the shutter speed up here and the ISO. But by sticking to one ISO when you're shooting, at least all you have to worry about is the shutter speed. So let's say right now, obviously I'm filming in the office and it's quite dark. By sticking to 100, I'd have to lower the shutter speed really low to make the picture quite bright, you see. But like we said earlier, 1/5 of a second, it'd be extremely hard to shoot that handheld and to have a nice, crisp, sharp shot, because it might, my hands, my slight movement might blur the picture, okay? So in that case, yes, you increase the ISO to 200, or let's say 320 in this case, And then now we can we can increase the shutter speed to acceptable levels. Now, you're probably thinking, hang on, so how do I expose my picture? What do I want to be bright? What do I want to be dark? How do I know what's correctly exposed? So again, your histogram here is your lifesaver. So ideally, you don't want anything on that right hand side corner here. Anything there means you will lose the information. So in this case here, we're losing information, I think, in this area here, the highlights. We're blowing the highlights here. So what you want to do, and this on a mobile phone is the golden rule, okay, always expose. If there's one thing that you need to remember is expose for the highlights, okay, because shadows are much easier to recover in post. So when you edit your photo afterwards, you can recover some of the shadows, but highlights are pretty much near impossible to recover in post. Okay, if you're overexposed and blown out your highlights, that's it, it's gone, and you won't be able to get that back in even though you shoot in raw. Okay, so make sure you expose for your highlights. Okay, so in this case, let's have a look. If we do a little tiny bit overexposed is fine. So if we do that, so I can show you the result afterwards. So here we go. We're gonna do 1/40th of a second. So you can see slightly overexposed here because it shows you a bar in here. But it seems fine here, okay? This area is fine. Now the shadows are not too crushed, so I'll be able to get that back in post. And what I'll do, I'll take a photo now, and I'll put it up on the screen somewhere where you can see when I recovered the shadows and lower the highlights a little bit, and it should be a nice balanced shot. Okay, so photography is really all about, normally on a digital SLR you'd have to worry about this as well, the aperture, okay, but here on a mobile phone you don't have to worry about that. Normally you'd have to play with those three, the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed. But being on the mobile phone, all you have to worry about is your shutter speed and your ISO. All right. So I hope I made that clear. Because trying to explain, hundreds of years worth of concept of photography in one video is probably not a simple task. So just play with your ISO settings and your shutter speed. So if you want to freeze the action, sorry, that was my air freshener going off. So if you want to freeze the action and you want to darken the picture, increase your shutter speed. And if you want some motion blur in your picture and you want to also increase the light, the brightness of your picture, you lower the shutter speed, but not to a point where it becomes impossible to get steady. So I'd say handheld, the maximum, probably the lowest you can set your shutter speed is 1/30th, maybe 1/25th if you're really steady. After that, you really risk getting some blur in your photo. Okay, so once you've set that up, then you can sort out your ISO as well. Okay, right, so the next one along is your metering mode. This one, I'll save you the hassle, just leave it on multi. It's just basically how the camera balances the light around your viewport. So how it takes the reading and try to average how it will expose your picture. There's only very specific scenarios where you'd want to change that setting. So I'll just leave it in multi. 99.9% of the time, that'll be the right setting, okay? Then we got the bottom row icons here. So they're probably the less used ones. First one, flash. Okay, let's put it out of the way. Do not use it. It's pretty useless to start with. And if you do need external lighting, then I suggest getting like an LED light, like a battery operated LED light or anything like that, because in most cases, it'll make your shot completely trash, so don't use it. Next one is the style of kind of creative filters. At the moment it's grayed out because I'm in RAW mode, but if you're in JPEG, then you can actually activate it. And to me, I wouldn't use it because it adds processing to the picture, and that defeats the point of being in manual mode in the first place. Okay, so If you're in basic mode, then I suppose, yeah, you can activate that, and at least it gives you less processing to do, but it's down to you. I personally have it completely off. Next one up is AWB, which is basically the automatic white balance. And this one, again, 99.9% of the time, I'll leave it on automatic. And all it does, all these presets here will change your the temperature of your shot. So how cool or how warm your shot is. So if we put it on cloudy right now, you see, it'll change it a bit warm. But you can change that in post because it's a raw file. Once you're in Lightroom or Topaz or Luminar or whatever editing software you use, you can change with a slider the actual white balance without affecting the actual quality of the photo. So I wouldn't worry about that. 99% of the time, the camera will get it right. If it was to get it completely wrong, then you can go in there and set your either a custom one down here or use a preset one just here. Okay. Next one along is the face and eye autofocus. This one I leave on face and eye because if I take pictures of the subject, I want it to make sure that the focus is on the face. It's nice and crisp and sharp, especially if you got continuous autofocus. This will make sure that it keeps your subject nice and focused, because it will recognize, the AI will recognize the eyes and the face features of your subject. Okay. It also recognizes dogs and cats, I believe. I'm not too sure about birds. I know the the digital SLRs do, but I don't know if the mobile phone does. And I haven't got a bird to photographs right now, so I can't actually tell you if it does or not. But I'd leave that on if I was you. Next one is night mode. That is basically for your basic mode. When you go into basic mode up there, and that's what will take a series of 3 or 4 different pictures, and we'll stack them up all together to give you that HDR look, especially at night, where you kind of will process your pictures even further. Hence why it's not active now, because we're in raw mode. And the last one is your dynamic range optimizer. So I'd leave that one on DRO Auto, okay? And it will basically increase your range, your dynamic range in the highlights and in the shadows. Okay. If you turn it off, it will decrease that. So I highly suggest just leave it on, and it doesn't actually increase that much. It doesn't introduce that much processing, if that makes sense. Then the next one, which is grayed out, is HDR Auto. This one would be on when you're in JPEG mode. There we go. And that again is stacks different photos to make sure that everything is kind of properly exposed, if that makes sense. But that gives you that HDR-y look that I'm not too fan of. Well, I'm not really a fan of it at all. Hence why I picked this phone and not another phone which processes and burns your image to death. So yeah, I'd definitely stay in the DRO Dynamic Range Optimizer Auto. And that is it for these options down here. So now that leaves us with, last but not least, the Mr. mode. So it's manual recall settings. So this one is very important, and I'll show you how to set it up. Basically what it is a custom presets. So let's say you're shooting in manual, you're shooting your subject, and all of a sudden in the corner of your eye you see a bike or a cyclist or something. You want to take one of those panning shots, or even a bus, and where you want to quickly get the settings adjusted on the go like this. And obviously if you're in manual and you have to mess with your shutter speed, your ISO, your focus and all that, you'll miss the shot. So what do? Well, you go to recall settings, and you've got 1, 2 or 3 at the top. You can see you can save 3 custom presets. So my first one, I just literally quickly press the button apply. Here we go. And then I'm in burst mode. So I'm ready to literally, my autofocus is set on continuous, my ISO is automatic, and my drive mode is in continuous shooting low. So at least I know that whatever is in my frame now on my in the middle of my screen, and as I pan and shoot, it will take a burst shot of about 10-15 frames per second, and it will, because it's on continuous autofocus, everything will be in focus well, should be anyway. All right. So the only thing I've got to do is to manually adjust my shutter speed here. So that's only one thing to adjust as opposed to everything else down here. Okay. So the way you set that up, okay, is easy, right? So you go to whatever mode you want. So let's say manual, and let's say, well, first of all, you have to bear in mind that burst mode, you can only shoot in JPEG. So you have to set it to JPEG. Then you go back to your manual mode, then set whatever setting you want. Okay, let's say you want continuous shooting, you want center, and you want your ISO stuck to 100, or you want it on ISO, okay? You want it automatic, and you want your drive mode in very high shooting, like 30 plus FPS per second, okay? Right, what you do then, you go to menu on the left-hand side, you go to shooting, so the first one, and you go down to camera settings memory. And what you do then, you choose a slot at the top, like 1, 2, or 3, which one you want, and you press save. And what it'll do, every time you're in a different mode, so let's say we're in shutter speed, in shutter priority now, I quickly go to recall, number 1, bang, that's it, done. And it will save those settings. And when you go back to regular mode, then it will, let's say, I don't know, manual mode, it will reset your old settings as well, okay? So now what I do want to do though is go back to this and, oops, hang on, single shooting, menu, file format, raw, there you go. So yeah, just to show you that if you're in raw only, okay, which shows you at the top here, I'm in raw file, and quickly I want to change, I go to recall settings, apply, and as you can see I'm in JPEG, and drive mode, continuous shooting in low setting, okay? And when I go back to my manual, bang, it resets it to one single shot and in raw. So that's extremely handy to have, and you can set pretty much any custom preset you want. So if you want, obviously what I've just set it as for continuous shooting, a burst mode, that's my first one. Then if I want to set, I don't know, anything specifically for moving subjects, then what I would do, I'll probably go for a single shooting. So let's say, you know, someone I walked past on the street and I want to take a quick picture of it, then I'll put it on continuous because obviously I don't want, I want the focus to be on that person. Then a center, so when I actually focus on that person, is continuously adjusting the focus, and then I can take the shot. And ISO on automatic, because let's say they're transitioning between a dark area to a bright area and I don't want to miss a shot and having to mess with the shutter speed, so at least having auto ISO in that particular instance will help me. And then what I do, go to menu and then save the setting as preset number 2, let's say, okay? And so on. So if you want a third one, then you can create a third one. So that's really handy way to save time and to make sure that you get your shot at all times. I think that's pretty much it for the menu, guys, to be honest. I think and I hope that I've covered pretty much everything. On the left hand side again, you got your lenses here. You've got your lock, so if you want to make sure that it doesn't go to landscape or portrait. And this is what we talked about earlier. So you've got your histogram and your level in the middle, and your menu obviously is your menu.
Right, so I think we covered quite a bit in this video, guys, and I hope that I bored you to death with all the manual settings and what everything does. But photography, especially on the mobile phone, it's like everything else. The more you experiment, the more you play with it, the better you get at it. It's not a secret. So, you know, I encourage you 1,000,000%, guys, to take your phone, and now that you know what setting does what and what to do in what situation, you know, I want a picture of that person walking past, I'll lower the shutter speed. I want this nice background coffee shop low light shot. I'm gonna increase the ISO. But do you see what I mean? It's all about experimenting, trying, and getting better at it. The more you practice, the better it will be. That's a given. So work on your composition, work on the settings, and in no time you'll be taking absolutely stunning pictures, guys. But I think that's pretty much it for me, guys. I hope you don't roast me on this first video because yeah, it's my first video, and you know, like yourselves, it's it's all about experimenting, trying, and facing, getting out of your comfort zone, and ultimately you get better at it. So yeah, that's it really. Oh, and do us a favor, if you like this video, obviously like it, press the like button, and do make sure to click the subscribe button as well, because the next video I'll put my money where my mouth is, and I'll take the camera, the Xperia 1 Mark 5 in London, and show you if I can get some nice shots with it. Spoiler alert, I kind of did, because I recorded that before I recorded this video. So don't forget to also click the notification bell, so as soon as this video is out, you'll know all about it. So that's it for me for now. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.